Welcome to A One-Story Teller, where every story unfolds with unexpected twists and turns that keep you on the edge of your seat. Today we bring you a tale that challenges perceptions, exposes deep-rooted prejudices, and ultimately delivers a powerful message about justice, equality, and accountability. This is the story of Assistant U.S. Attorney Rachel Monroe, a woman whose dedication to upholding the law would place her directly in the crosshairs of systemic racism within the very institution meant to protect her. Rachel Monroe was not just any federal prosecutor. Known for her unyielding commitment to justice, she had spent over a decade dismantling corruption, exposing organized crime rings, and advocating for marginalized communities. Her reputation as a fearless advocate earned her both admiration and enemies. Yet, despite the threats and obstacles she faced, Rachel never wavered in her mission to ensure fairness under the law. To some, she was a beacon of hope, while to others, particularly those who sought to exploit loopholes in the system, she represented an unrelenting force standing in their way. On the other side of this narrative stood Officer Daniel Harper, a veteran police officer whose career spanned 2 decades. Harper was a polarizing figure within the department. To his supporters, he was a decorated officer who upheld the badge with pride and integrity. To his detractors, however, he embodied everything wrong with unchecked authority. A man whose biases often clouded his judgment and whose actions frequently bordered on excessive. Over the years, numerous complaints had been filed against him, alleging racial profiling, verbal abuse, and unwarranted aggression. Yet each investigation ended inconclusively, leaving Harper free to continue patrolling the streets. The stage for this explosive confrontation was set in downtown Chicago, a city long plagued by tensions between law enforcement and minority communities. It was here, during a routine traffic stop late one evening, that fate intertwined the lives of Rachel Monroe and Officer Daniel Harper, forever altering the course of both their futures. Rachel Monroe had just left a high-profile court hearing where she successfully prosecuted members of a notorious gang involved in drug trafficking and violent crimes. Exhausted but triumphant, she climbed into her car, eager to return home to her family. As she drove through the bustling streets of Chicago's South Side, Rachel noticed flashing lights behind her. Pulling over onto the shoulder, she rolled down her window, expecting nothing more than a minor infraction, perhaps a broken taillight or failure to signal. What followed was anything but routine. Officer Daniel Harper approached her vehicle, his demeanor already tense and suspicious. Without asking for identification or explaining why he had pulled her over, Harper began interrogating Rachel, demanding to know where she was coming from and whether she had any illegal substances in her possession. His tone was accusatory, laced with thinly veiled hostility. When Rachel calmly informed him that she was a federal prosecutor and requested clarification for the stop, Harper scoffed, dismissing her credentials outright. Harper's behavior escalated rapidly as he leaned closer, scrutinizing Rachel's face with a flashlight. He made derogatory remarks about her appearance, implying that someone like her couldn't possibly hold such a prestigious position. Ignoring protocol entirely, Harper ordered Rachel out of the car, insisting on conducting a search without probable cause. When Rachel politely but firmly refused, citing her rights as a citizen, Harper grew visibly agitated. It was at this moment that things took a deadly turn. Harper drew his weapon, pointing it directly at Rachel while shouting contradictory commands. Panicked bystanders captured parts of the altercation on their phones as Rachel attempted to de-escalate the situation. But Harper's rage only intensified. In a shocking display of brutality, he fired a single shot, striking Rachel in the leg. The sound echoed through the quiet neighborhood, sending shockwaves of fear and outrage rippling across the community. As Rachel collapsed, clutching her wound, Harper seemed momentarily stunned by his own actions. Realizing the gravity of what he had done, he radioed for backup, claiming self-defense, though no evidence supported his claim. Within minutes, paramedics arrived, stabilizing Rachel before rushing her to the hospital. Meanwhile, news of the shooting spread like wildfire, igniting protests and calls for immediate accountability. Social media platforms erupted, hashtags trended, and local activists mobilized demanding justice for Rachel and reform within the police department. Back at the scene, investigators worked tirelessly gathering evidence, interviewing witnesses, and reviewing footage captured by nearby surveillance cameras. Each piece of information painted a damning picture of Officer Harper's conduct, revealing a pattern of reckless behavior fueled by racial bias. For Rachel, lying in a hospital bed recovering from surgery, the incident was not just a personal attack, but a stark reminder of the systemic issues plaguing law enforcement nationwide. Word of the shooting reached Washington, D.C., prompting swift action from top officials within the Department of Justice. Recognizing the severity of the case, they dispatched a team of seasoned investigators tasked with uncovering the truth behind Harper's actions. Simultaneously, Internal Affairs launched their own inquiry, determined to determine whether Harper's history of misconduct warranted disciplinary measures beyond standard protocol. Meanwhile, Rachel remained hospitalized, surrounded by loved ones and colleagues offering support. Despite the physical pain she endured, Rachel vowed to fight back, not just for herself, but for all those who had suffered similar injustices. Her resolve only strengthened when she learned that Harper had initially claimed she posed a threat, despite overwhelming evidence proving otherwise. Determined to hold him accountable, Rachel authorized the release of her medical records and testimony detailing the events leading up to the shooting. Public pressure mounted as protests grew larger and louder. Community leaders joined forces with civil rights organizations, staging demonstrations outside police headquarters and courthouses alike. Their message was clear: enough was enough. Calls for transparency, accountability, and meaningful reform echoed throughout the nation, resonating with citizens weary of witnessing repeated instances of police brutality go unpunished. In response to mounting scrutiny, authorities expedited proceedings against Officer Harper, ensuring due process while maintaining transparency. A grand jury convened, reviewing evidence presented by prosecutors and investigators. Testimonies from eyewitnesses, including several bystanders who recorded portions of the altercation, corroborated Rachel's account, further undermining Harper's claims of self-defense. Ballistics reports confirmed that Harper's bullet trajectory aligned with Rachel's description of being shot while seated inside her vehicle, providing irrefutable proof of his culpability. Facing insurmountable evidence, Harper's defense crumbled under scrutiny. Attempts to justify his actions as reasonable force fell flat, given the absence of any credible threat posed by Rachel. Instead, Harper's past transgressions came under intense examination, highlighting a troubling pattern of discriminatory practices and abusive behavior. Records revealed multiple unresolved complaints, alleging similar incidents involving minority individuals, further tarnishing Harper's credibility. Ultimately, the grand jury returned an indictment charging Harper with attempted murder, aggravated assault, and violation of civil rights, among other offenses. News of his arrest sent shockwaves through the police department, where many colleagues struggled to reconcile the allegations with their perception of Harper as a dedicated officer. Some expressed disbelief, while others quietly acknowledged long-standing concerns about his temperament and judgment. For Rachel, the indictment marked a significant victory, though bittersweet given the circumstances. Speaking publicly for the first time since the shooting, she addressed reporters gathered outside the courthouse, emphasizing the importance of holding law enforcement accountable, regardless of rank or tenure. Her words resonated deeply, striking chords among listeners nationwide who saw her courage as emblematic of broader struggles facing society today. Behind bars awaiting trial, Harper grappled with the consequences of his choices. Stripped of his badge and stripped of his freedom, he faced a reckoning unlike any he had experienced before. Legal counsel advised cooperation, hoping to mitigate potential sentencing, though prospects remained bleak given the weight of evidence stacked against him. Friends and family distanced themselves, unwilling to associate with someone embroiled in such controversy, leaving Harper isolated and reflective. Throughout the legal proceedings, Rachel continued advocating for systemic change, using her platform to amplify voices often marginalized within discussions surrounding policing reform. She collaborated with lawmakers drafting legislation aimed at increasing oversight, implementing mandatory bias training, and establishing independent review boards empowered to investigate misconduct allegations impartially. These efforts gained traction, garnering bipartisan support, indicative of shifting attitudes toward addressing entrenched inequities within law enforcement agencies. Simultaneously, grassroots movements flourished, empowering communities to demand accountability and transparency. Activists organized town halls, facilitated dialogues between residents and officials, and pushed for policy changes designed to rebuild trust eroded over generations. Educational initiatives focused on teaching youth about civic engagement, conflict resolution, and nonviolent protest strategies, fostering environments conducive to sustainable progress. Months later, as Harper's trial commenced, public interest remained palpable. Courtrooms overflowed with spectators eager to witness firsthand how justice would be served. Prosecutors meticulously outlined their case, presenting compelling arguments supported by irrefutable evidence. Defense attorneys countered, attempting to cast doubt on witness reliability and procedural integrity, though their efforts proved largely ineffective given the overwhelming nature of facts presented. After weeks of deliberation, jurors reached a unanimous verdict finding Harper guilty on all counts. Sentencing followed swiftly, with Judge Thompson delivering a scathing rebuke, condemning Harper's actions as egregious violations of public trust deserving maximum penalties allowable under law. Cheers erupted outside the courthouse as news broke, signaling a monumental step forward in combating institutionalized racism within policing structures. Reflecting on outcomes achieved, Rachel expressed gratitude, acknowledging contributions made by countless individuals instrumental in securing justice. She reiterated commitments to continuing advocacy work, pledging unwavering dedication to creating safer, equitable societies for future generations. Similarly affected communities celebrated milestones attained, recognizing them as catalysts propelling ongoing efforts toward lasting transformation. And so our tale concludes not with finality but with promise. Promise that even amidst adversity, hope endures, resilience prevails, and collective action yields tangible results. Stories like these remind us that humanity thrives not on division but on unity, not on hatred but on love, not on silence but on courageous voices speaking truth to power. Thank you for joining us here at A1 Storyteller, where each episode aims to inspire, provoke thought, and ignite conversations shaping brighter futures together.